The next document is a memorandum of understanding between the Department of Atomic Energy of the Government of India and the Department for Business Energy and Industrial Strategy of the Government of the United Kingdom concerning cooperation with India's Global Centre for Nuclear Energy Partnership. This will be exchanged on the UK side once again by His Excellency Mr. Alex Ellis, British High Commissioner to India, and on the Indian side by Foreign Shri K. N. Vyas, Secretary Department of Atomic Energy to India, and on the Indian side by Foreign Shri K. N. Vyas, Secretary Department of Atomic Energy. Excellencies, this concludes the exchange of agreements ceremony. I now request the spokesperson of the External Affairs Ministry to conduct the proceedings.
Good afternoon, distinguished Prime Ministers, members of both delegations, friends from the media. We will now begin with the press statements. May I now request Shri Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, sir, to make his press statement.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, डिस्टिंग्विश्ड डेलीगेट्स, मीडिया के हमारे साथी, नमस्कार। सबसे पहले मैं प्रधानमंत्री बोरिस जॉनसन और उनके डेलीगेशन का भारत में हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। प्रधानमंत्री के रूप में भले ही यह उनकी पहली भारत यात्रा है, लेकिन एक पुराने मित्र के रूप में वे भारत को बहुत अच्छे से जानते हैं, समझते हैं। पिछले कई वर्षों से भारत और यूके के संबंधों को मजबूत करने में प्रधानमंत्री जॉनसन की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही है। इस समय जब भारत अपनी आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहा है, प्रधानमंत्री बोरिस जॉनसन का यहां आना अपने आप में एक ऐतिहासिक पल है। और कल तो पूरे भारत ने देखा है कि आपने अपनी भारत यात्रा का शुभारंभ साबरमती आश्रम में महात्मा गांधी को श्रद्धा सुमन अर्पित करके किया। फ्रेंड, पिछले साल हमने दोनों देशों के बीच कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप की स्थापना की थी और इस दशक में अपने संबंधों को दिशा देने के लिए हमने एक महत्वाकांक्षी रोड मैप 2030 भी लॉन्च किया था। आज की हमारी बातचीत में हमने इस रोड मैप में हुई प्रगति को रिव्यू भी किया और आगामी समय के लिए कुछ लक्ष्य भी तय किए। फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट के विषय पर दोनों देशों की टीम्स काम कर रही है। बातचीत में अच्छी प्रगति हो रही है और हमने इस साल के अंत तक एफटीए के समापन की दिशा में पूरा प्रयास करने का निर्णय लिया है। पिछले कुछ महीनों में भारत ने यूएई और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट का समापन किया है। उसी गति, उसी कमिटमेंट के साथ हम यूके के साथ भी एफटीए पर आगे बढ़ना चाहेंगे। हमने रक्षा क्षेत्र में सहयोग बढ़ाने पर भी सहमति व्यक्त की है। रक्षा क्षेत्र में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, टेक्नोलॉजी, डिजाइन और डेवलपमेंट सभी क्षेत्रों में यूके द्वारा आत्मनिर्भर भारत के समर्थन का हम स्वागत करते हैं। फ्रेंड्स, भारत में चल रहे व्यापक रिफॉर्म्स हमारे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मॉडर्नाइजेशन प्लान और नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन के बारे में भी हमने चर्चा की। हम यूके की कंपनियों द्वारा भारत में बढ़ते निवेश का स्वागत करते हैं और इसका एक उत्तम उदाहरण हमें कल गुजरात में हाल में देखने को मिला। यूके में रहने वाले 1.6 मिलियन भारतीय मूल के लोग समाज और अर्थव्यवस्था के हर क्षेत्र में सकारात्मक योगदान कर रहे हैं। हमें उनकी उपलब्धियों पर गर्व है और इस जीवंत सेतु को हम और मजबूत करना चाहते हैं। इस दिशा में प्रधानमंत्री जॉनसन ने निजी रूप से बहुत योगदान किया है। इसके लिए मैं उनका अभिनंदन करता हूं। फ्रेंड्स, हमने ग्लासगो में आयोजित COP26 में लिए गए संकल्पों को पूर्ण करने के लिए अपनी प्रतिबद्धता जताई। आज हमने अपनी क्लाइमेट और एनर्जी पार्टनरशिप को और अधिक गहन करने का निर्णय लिया। हम यूके को भारत के नेशनल हाइड्रोजन मिशन में शामिल होने के लिए आमंत्रित करते हैं और हमारे बीच स्ट्रेटेजिक टेक डायलॉग की स्थापना का मैं हृदय से स्वागत करता हूं। फ्रेंड्स, आज हमारे बीच ग्लोबल इनोवेशन पार्टनरशिप के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन अरेंजमेंट्स का समापन एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण पहल साबित होगी। यह अन्य देशों के साथ हमारी विकास साझेदारी को और मजबूती प्रदान करेगा। इसके तहत तीसरे देशों में मेड इन इंडिया इनोवेशंस के ट्रांसफर और स्केलिंग अप के लिए भारत और यूके $100 मिलियन तक को फाइनेंस करेंगे। इनसे सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स की प्राप्ति में और क्लाइमेट चेंज से निपटने के प्रयासों में भी मदद मिलेगी। ये हमारे स्टार्टअप्स और एमएसएमई सेक्टर के नए मार्केट्स तलाशने और अपने इनोवेशंस को ग्लोबल करने में बहुत उपयोगी सिद्ध होगा। फ्रेंड, हमने क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक स्तर पर हो रहे अनेक डेवलपमेंट्स पर भी चर्चा की। एक फ्री, ओपन, इंक्लूसिव एंड रूल बेस्ड ऑर्डर पर आधारित इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र बनाए रखने पर हमने जोर दिया। इंडो पैसिफिक ओशन इनिशिएटिव से जुड़ने के यूके के निर्णय का भारत स्वागत करता है। हमने यूक्रेन में तुरंत युद्ध विराम और समस्या के समाधान के लिए डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी पर बल दिया। हमने सभी देशों की क्षेत्रीय अखंडता और संप्रभुता के सम्मान का महत्व भी दोहराया। हमने एक पीसफुल, स्टेबल और सिक्योर अफगानिस्तान और एक इंक्लूसिव और रिप्रेजेंटेटिव गवर्नमेंट के लिए अपना समर्थन दोहराया। यह आवश्यक है कि अफगान भूमि का प्रयोग अन्य देशों में आतंकवाद फैलाने के लिए नहीं होना चाहिए। एक्सेलेंसी, आपने हमेशा भारत और यूके के संबंधों को मजबूत करने के लिए विशेष प्रयास किए हैं। इसके लिए हम आपका अभिनंदन करते हैं। एक बार फिर आपका और आपके प्रतिनिधिमंडल का भारत में हार्दिक स्वागत है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir. May I now request His Excellency Right Honourable Boris Johnson,
Thank you
Prime
very,
Minister.
very much. Thank you all. My friend, Prime Minister Modi, Narendra, my khas dost, I think is the phrase I want in Hindi. We've had a fantastic 2 days here in India. And yesterday I became the first Conservative Prime Minister to visit Gujarat, which is your birthplace, of course, Narendra, but as you've just said, the ancestral home of about half of all the British Indians, and I had an amazing reception, absolutely amazing. I felt a bit like Sachin Tendulkar, and my face was about as ubiquitous everywhere as Amitabh Bachchan. I was everywhere to be seen, and it was fantastic. Now, this morning we've had wonderful talks, and I think that they have strengthened our relationship in every way. In challenging times, it is very important that we, the Kasdos, get closer together. And I believe the partnership between Britain and India, one of the oldest democracies, Britain is one of the oldest, I mean Iceland they say is older, but we're one of the oldest, and India, certainly the largest democracy, is one of the defining friendships of our times. And what we're doing is taking forward an ambitious 10-year roadmap for British-Indian relations that we agreed last year. It was great to see you at the G7, but since then the threats of autocratic coercion have grown even further. And it's therefore vital that we deepen our cooperation, including our shared interest in keeping the Indo-Pacific open and free. So today, we've agreed a new and expanded defence and security partnership, a decades-long commitment that will not only forge tighter bonds between us, but support your goal, Narendra, of Make in India. The UK is creating an India-specific open general export licence, reducing bureaucracy and slashing delivery times for defence procurement. We've agreed to work together to meet new threats across land, sea, air, space and cyber, including partnering on new fighter jet technology, maritime technologies to detect and respond to threats in the oceans. We're extending our partnership as science superpowers and building on the collaboration between Oxford AstraZeneca, for instance, and the Serum Institute of India, which vaccinated more than 1 billion people against COVID, including, I'm proud to say, I have the Indian jab in my arms, and a power of good it did me. So many thanks to India. And that has helped India to become what Narendra has called the pharmacy of the world. Today, we're embarking on joint initiatives on malaria vaccines, on antimicrobial resistance, and a digital partnership between the Indian National Health Authority and our NHS. We're also taking big steps together on energy security, helping each other to reduce our dependence on imported hydrocarbons and adopt cheaper, more sustainable, homegrown alternatives. And we have a new offer, a new plan to develop offshore wind from the Celtic Sea to Dhanushkodi. We've got a new UK-India hydrogen science and innovation hub, and we're taking forward the Green Grid solar power initiative that you and I began, Narendra, at COP26 in Glasgow together with 80 other countries. It's an incredible fact that the sun provides enough energy every day to power the world 10,000 times over. You have a lot of solar power here in India. The sun's putting on a fantastic performance today, but we have quite a lot in Britain as well. These partnerships form the superstructure of the living bridge that Narendra describes between our countries. And today, that bridge is humming with goods and services and people and capital, whizzing back and forth, east to west. And sometimes it can be hard to tell whether something is British or Indian or, frankly, Brindian. And on Wednesday, I went to the airport in a Range Rover, Indian-owned but made in Britain. And when I arrived here on Thursday, I visited JCB, British-owned but made in India, exporting 60,000 around the world, by the way, 110 countries. Or take the example of the Norton motorbike, now being revived in Britain by an Indian company. And I'm very pleased that this visit has not only deepened our economic partnership, we've agreed new deals worth £1 billion and created more than 11,000 jobs across the UK in everything from electric buses to the robotic surgery of Smith & Nephew, which I saw yesterday, as well as in artificial intelligence, where India's strengths are remarkable. And perhaps most significantly for the long term, we're making full use of the freedom that we now have to reach a free trade agreement, a deal where you can lift those tariffs, you can, India, Narendra, on our machinery and apples. Actually, you've already done it on apples, so thank you for the apples. And in turn, we can lift the tariffs on your rice and textiles. We've already closed 4 chapters, and today we're announcing new measures to make it easier to export UK-made medical devices to India and ensure mutual recognition of UK higher education qualifications. And as the next round of talks begins here next week, we're telling our negotiators, get it done by Diwali in October. Get it done by Diwali. This could double our trade and investment by the end of the decade, widening that living bridge into a multi-lane motorway pullulating with beautiful jointly made electric vehicles and creating hundreds of thousands of new jobs in both our countries. So, as India celebrates its 75th year of independence, I am filled with optimism about the years ahead and the depth of the friendship between our countries and the security and the prosperity that our partnership can deliver for our people for generations to come. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Prime Minister Modi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. That concludes the press statements. Please remain seated as the dignitaries leave.
All right, so that was the joint presser of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He is the first Tory Prime Minister from Britain to in fact visit India, and he had a lot of interesting things to say, of course. He said that he's filled with optimism for India's future, and he said that the partnership that India and the United Kingdom has can actually flourish over the course of the next decade. He also said that he would like his diplomats to finish off or close off the free trade agreement that has been in the works for quite some months now, hopefully by the end of Diwali. And this would, of course, double the trade that India and the United Kingdom have. And apart from this, the British Prime Minister also said that India is, of course, the pharmacy of the world, and the jab that he's got in his arm for COVID-19 was in fact made in India. So he stressed upon the partnerships that India and the United Kingdom have built. And an interesting term that was used by the British Prime Minister is that the products that are now going around the world can in fact be termed to be Brindian, half British, half Indian, in terms of how they could be owned by an Indian company and manufactured by the United Kingdom, or owned by the United Kingdom and manufactured in India. This is an interesting sort of a synthesis that was spoken of by the British Prime Minister. He, of course, gave the example of Jaguar Land Rover, a company that is owned by India but manufactured many of its cars in Britain, and that was the car that he said that he had been driving around. And he also gave the example, interesting example, of these JCBs. This is a company, remember, that is owned by the British. It started its plant back in 2006, but it manufactures predominantly in India. So very important press briefing there by the two Prime Ministers, full of optimism, full of talk of the possible cooperation and partnership ahead for the two nations. And my colleague Siddhant Sibil has been tracking this story very closely for us. He is, of course, standing by with more information. Siddhant, we had just heard the joint presser there by the two Prime Ministers. A lot of optimism and a lot of hope of this partnership that we expect will strengthen for the next 10 years, because that is the roadmap that the two Prime Ministers seem to be looking at.
Well, yes, that is the roadmap, and of course the statement by both leaders emphasizing on the relationship and how to give the relationship that much needed direction. But if you look at the key focus areas, something that both the leaders mentioned was on trade, on a free trade agreement. The British Prime Minister clearly emphasizing on the next round of talks, which we have been talking about, the third round of talks happening next week. And he said that he is hopeful that there will be more completion in terms of the negotiation by Diwali, also calling for a removal of tariff barriers. But nonetheless, if we talk about geopolitics, that was a significant aspect, because the Indian side mentioned about Ukraine and it is the British side which did not mention about Ukraine, which is pretty interesting given that how vocal UK has been on the issue of Ukraine. We have seen previously from the same place the Japanese Prime Minister condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and of course with the Australian Prime Minister as well, Scott Morrison, the virtual summit, there was a mention of Ukraine, but this time there was no mention of Ukraine by the British Prime Minister, even though yesterday in Gujarat he did mention about India condemning what is happening or the killings in Busha. One of the key practical outcomes of this meeting has been on defense. There was a mention of defense, and we know that the Brits have offered know-how when it comes to building of fighter jets. Now this is something very important given that it can in future wean away India from its excessive dependency on defense from Russia. India has good relationship with Russia, with London and with Washington, but if India is in a sense diversified, it will be seen as a positive development for India, which is keen on more local manufacturing of defense equipments under the Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Absolutely, indeed. That's an important point that you spoke about, the possibility of the British offering some of the technological know-how, especially in the manufacture of jet engines that would be used in the fighter jets for India. And also, Siddhant, the aspect that the British Prime Minister seemed to be stressing a lot was on how there is a cohesion between the Indian and the British business interests, and this is something that we can also look forward for in the coming decade. He said of a new brand called Brindian that could be owned either in Britain or India and then manufacturing in either in India or in Britain. He gave the examples of Jaguar Land Rover and the JCB structures. Are we expecting to see more of the same in terms of what we can expect over the next decade?
Well, he surely has coined a new term, Brindian, and of course this is a term which we will hear in future a lot. But if we look at the context of it, his comments especially on trade coming at a time when UK has left the European Union and it is looking for trading partners, and India fits the bill essentially because of shared values, the large Indian diaspora. Of course, Indian investments in UK are well known. The British investments in UK are well known. In fact, yesterday we know that there has been an announcement of £1 billion of investment, out of which £700 million will be invested by Indian companies in UK. So trade remains a major focus area, and of course this visit is all about making sure that the trade between the two countries increases, and both leaders emphasized on the free trade pact as well. We know that EU is also in talks with Delhi when it comes to the free trade agreement, but the free trade agreement with European Union has been languishing for a pretty long time. We know the first round of talks are due to happen in a few months' time, but it is the haste by London with New Delhi that can essentially lead to a conclusion of the trade agreements, which India is keen as well, because one thing that India has been emphasizing is on the relaxation of visa regime for skilled Indian workers, more Indians who can go to UK to study and also for employment.
Absolutely, indeed. Almost about 1.4 million Indians, in fact, live in the United Kingdom. We are the biggest diaspora community within Britain. And another aspect, Siddhant, which the British Prime Minister was stressing on was a free trade agreement that he said he would like to finalize by Diwali this year, because that would mean that India's trade with the United Kingdom can actually double by the end of this decade. Looking at how things have been panning out and looking at how the negotiations for the discussions on tariffs on different goods and commodities have been discussed, is that a realistic timeline?
Well, there is a political will by both sides, both India and the UK. So essentially that is driving the talks. 2 rounds have happened. 1 round will start. The 3rd round, in fact, will start from next week. And we know that both sides are pushing. 4 chapters have been negotiated on. There are still a lot of negotiations still left in various other contentious issues. But because of the fact that both leaders, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, have been emphasizing on it, especially at a press statement statement shows that both sides are working and asking their trade negotiations to work on it as soon as possible. But if you look at the larger context of this visit is not only about trade, but it's also about geopolitics, and perhaps it gives a little breather to the British Prime Minister as well, who is facing a backlash at home because of the Partygate scandal. But here we saw the bonhomie, the camaraderie between the two leaders. The UK Prime Minister started his statement by calling Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi as his khas dost, as a special friend, and of course talking about his visit to Gujarat. He's very elated about his visit to Gujarat because this is the second time in the day that he has mentioned about his visit in Gujarat. Earlier at Rashtrapati Bhavan as well, he mentioned about his visit to Gujarat and said that he felt he's Sachin Tendulkar or Amitabh Bachchan because of the welcome he got in Gujarat. But essentially there is a people-to-people link as well, because there's a huge Indian diaspora, and in that huge Indian diaspora there are a good percentage are linked or are Gujarati origin Indians there in UK. In fact, Preeti Patel, who is the Interior Minister in UK, is of Gujarat origin. So there has been special emphasis on the personal chemistry between the two leaders, and also the people-to-people connect that UK has been saying and that India has been saying is a living bridge between the two countries, a much celebrated living bridge. But we can see more focus in terms of this living bridge if UK allows more Indians to go to UK, especially skilled Indian workers. And UK needs more skilled Indian workers, primarily post-Brexit. It is facing an issue regarding skilled workers, and India can help in that issue.
Absolutely indeed, Siddhant. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting us all those updates. So a very important press briefing there where we heard. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.